Hey, experts listeners. I want to key you into something that we do very special here at Ops Experts Club, and that's a masterclass. We have a free masterclass called Foundations That Scale. And the great thing about this masterclass is it's for operation professionals who are growing businesses. One of the most dangerous things you can do as an operator is grow businesses on a foundations that's not stable. So in this particular masterclass, we take apart all of the inside pieces of your team, your tech, and how they're using time. And we make sure that you're building on a foundation that's stable. So if you want to check out a great masterclass completely for free, go to foundationsthatscale.com. We'll see you there.
Welcome to the Ops Experts Club with Aaron, Terryn, and Savannah. This podcast will take you behind the scenes of some of the finer details of multi-million-dollar companies. These ops experts have dealt with operations for scaling companies and well-established businesses with anywhere from small to large teams. If you've ever been deep into the details of a major company, then you know how much it takes, and these conversations are just for you. Welcome to the Ops Experts Club podcast.
Well, thanks for joining us today. Another episode of Ops Experts Club. I'm excited to have you. I'm also excited, not because you're not awesome, but we like to have guests. So I'm really excited to have a guest with us today. And this is Mason William. We're pretty excited to have him. I'm not going to go into too much detail on what he is, what he does, because that's the whole reason we brought him on, so he can tell us what he does. So thank you very much, Mason, for joining us today. How are you today, Mason?
Thanks for having me on. I am, fortunate to have known you guys from working in the past. And so really appreciated being asked to come on and hopefully I can share some stuff that'll be interesting or fun for people from, my background.
Yeah, I mean, it's been great working with you. Before we get too far into the questions, just a little pat on the back. I really appreciate working with you. You're always somebody who sets what they're going to do and does what they say they're going to do, and very reliable to work with, especially in your space. Sometimes a lot can be asked and very short turnarounds, and
Yeah.
you're always the guy who got it done.
And, something that I think that is a big thing because in my space, there's a lot of creative people and it can be a rarity to find a creative person who can also be operationally minded or organized and understands the kind of ins and outs of business. So, I certainly with subcontractors in the past have had to be very thoughtful about, okay, this person may do a beautiful job, but are they the right person for this project? So yeah, so that's a high compliment. And it's something that I've always tried to be strong in is both arms of that whole process.
Yeah, that reminds me of another conversation we had where it's hard to kind of manage creative types because what if you're not feeling very creative? What if you're up to a deadline, but your creative juices aren't flowing and operational you has to kick in just to get it done because the creative you is taking a nap and has no inspiration?
Yeah, that is a great question. There's that whole idea of writer's block, but the solution to that is actually having strong structure and having a plan. Even creativity operates and is brilliant because of the way it operates within parameters. Like even music, a great soloist is still operating within the time and structure and the chord progression and the key that any song is in. So it really is both, but we tend to think in things that are either or. So yeah, that is part of it as well.
I like that. Good analogy. So how often does operational you have to kick creative you in the butt and be like, look, dude, we set some parameters here. We've got a schedule. Keep going.
Quite often. Well, the creative side of you could be very ADD, very easily distracted. And my creative side definitely is because a part of that is catching inspiration, right? But that can be, counterproductive to having a schedule, to having deadlines, things like that. So
Yeah.
good to kind of give windows I found or buckets is something I learned working with a team in the past, is, hey, how many buckets of time can we allot a week to this project? How many buckets of time should it take? And maybe that's a better way to look at it, or having in front of you a punch list of things you need to get done. You can see some cool stuff here, but you can't see my whiteboard over here where I kind of have my to-do items that I like to check off. And something I learned with screenwriting when I was in film school is that if you're, say, writing a script for a whole movie, a full-length feature, something that professional writers will do is they'll have what you call a step outline. And so they actually have each scene of the movie on a little card, which is like the characters involved, the conflict that takes place in that scene, and the outcome. And so that's a way of kind of defeating writer's block or kind of saying, I'm not creative in this moment, is to say, okay, here's what I need to write. And now I know. So there's kind of no question, like at least I have a direction and a result I'm supposed to come up with, you know?
Interesting.
Yeah, not too different than, just finishing up a project. You know the end goal, you know the steps to overcome. You kind of have your prompts, and then you just kind of gotta go for it. Do your research, take a stab at something. So tell us more about you. What's your main role? Who for? I know you're working for you now, or you've been working for you for a long time, contracting with different people, some more than others. But tell us a little bit more about that.
Yeah, so I am a producer, video producer, content creator. Especially right now, my emphasis has been in working with individuals and maybe small organizations that are trying to build their platform online. I gravitate towards people who are really passionate about their ideas, whatever those may be. And so I produce all the way from a podcast or YouTube channel down to the social content like smaller YouTube videos, reels, YouTube shorts, clips and things like that, and kind of keeping the through line and the cohesive message. So, but in the past, I've also created videos for sales funnels. I've, created Facebook ads, YouTube ads, brand identity type homepage videos, documentary type videos. So I've done a lot of different things, but I think the connecting point for me has always been storytelling and clearly communicating. So, with my new company that I formed just this year is Evandigital Content, and really is all about message, all about breaking down a message and how do we most effectively get that out through all these different channels that are available today.
How'd you get started in that?
Well, I always enjoyed, having a home video camera when I was a kid and messing around and making funny stuff, but I was always a writer, even when I was little, I would write stories. I actually wrote one of my first stories on a typewriter. So,
God.
yeah, so I think it was a gift from my grandfather, and I feel like that adds the stamp of legitimacy to it. But anyway, so I got into it because having this writing background and playing around with video cameras, one day a friend kind of said, "Hey, if you know anybody, there's somebody looking for video editing help. This guy needs a new editor." And I said, "I want that job." So I started as an intern working for a video production company and just kind of learning the ropes of professional video editing. And from there, I turned it into a lead editor job and then got experience shooting and learned how to run a business and invoice clients and do all kinds of things, and started taking on small contracts on the side. And then I worked for 3 years as the video production specialist at Pedro Adeo, which is where I met a lot of you guys, the whole team. And then now kind of doing my own solo thing again. So that's kind of my history trajectory of my work.
It's quite the journey.
Yeah.
In creative space, I think a lot of times if you can kind of show off your flair of what you can do, doing kind of small things, and then somebody gives you a chance to do something on a bigger stage. And that's certainly what it was with Pedro. And then maybe you get to the point where you decide, oh, I'm going to do my own thing again now with kind of new understanding and new experience under my belt.
No, that makes sense. I was gonna say, I'm curious with all the work that you're doing now, at least for your clients in the social media space, what do you see them leaning heavier into these days when it comes to social video? Is it YouTube Shorts? Is it TikTok? Is it Reels? Or do they try to like spread it out across all three?
Yeah, definitely Reels is a big one. I think everybody sees Instagram as kind of like, I know I should be on there, is what you'll hear a lot. I know I need to be creating short form content, but it's tough. And I mean, it's even tough for me because having a bit of, I've been doing video production for 16 plus years now. And like I joked with one of my clients, we're in our 30s, and I'm like, here I am, an old guy trying to make a 1-minute clip when the ones that everybody wants to see are 15 seconds, But technology changes so much, and especially with social media and the format in which we're kind of giving people information. So those are really huge right now and performing well. And the YouTube Shorts and the Reels, so that's definitely a big emphasis. But I think that to create, you can spend a lot of energy or time into creating those things, but I think that it's important that it's coming from somewhere, that there's a source of content. Doesn't have to be, but it is good, because if you're creating those things, they're like giving appetizers out, and you'd hate to give an appetizer out and have no meal to offer anybody, because they're going to be like, oh, this person's cool. Did you see this video? Like, and I go to their channel or their page and there's nothing more for me to consume. So,
Yeah.
okay. Oh, well, whatever.
That makes sense. That makes sense. I was gonna say, what's it like going from somebody who's grown up producing feature, long form videos, and all of a sudden you're like, oh wait, now I have to just create 15 seconds. But it makes sense if you're pulling from a larger, longer video that you're just kind of like referencing back to, I'm guessing, right?
Yeah, I think that especially communicators, and I feel some of this as, even though if I'm editing somebody else's video, I feel this in a different way, but I think there's always a reluctancy to, they call in writing, kill your darlings, like to chop off, leave stuff on the editing room floor, like decide, okay, I can do without this piece. I can take this 3-minute video that is just incredible, I'm in love with it, and tell myself, okay, I'm going to make a 30-second clip, and that's enough to like get my point across. Because if you're a communicator, you generally are verbose, and like to hear your voice, or you like to really set it up and frame it, so that it is tough. And the gap is you as somebody knowing the whole message to somebody who's just passing by and is willing to take it at a 15-second bite like that. They're in a whole different headspace. And so you're wrapped up, you're in the eye of the storm, you're in like the heart of the message. So for you to try to put yourself there and say, okay, this is how it's going to hit, and I have to be okay with that, and it has to be good enough for that to have been an effective piece of content.
Yeah, like how can you shrink your super long-winded point down into like 10 words, so somebody just be like, thanks or no thanks, and hopefully they say thanks and they go back and watch like that full statement that you had, or video you had. It's interesting. It's a weird space that we're at now, just trying to, like you said, put out appetizers and see if anybody gets hungry from the content that you're making.
Yeah, it's kind of like boxing, in that, boxing is a combination of different things. There's a jab, there's the hook, and so with, one of my clients, he'll have clips from his podcast that could be really inspirational, really insightful. And then there'll be clips of him doing what he loves. He loves working out, physical fitness. And there's clips of him and his girlfriend. And I tell him, I'm like, hey, look at this clip of you and your girlfriend. It's like got 15,000 views, like, And so for him, it might feel like, oh, but the message, what I have to say is the most important.
Yeah.
But you know what? It's really a combination of things that paints a bigger picture and helps people get to know you. And especially at the speed at which people are scrolling, it's all about impressions and chances. Just like people used to buy bus stops benches, they put their ad on the bench. So when you sat there and went by, you would see, and you're not like sitting there waiting for the bus going, oh, I got to call up that realtor. Or if you're driving down the street, but it's an impression, it's a touch. And so the more that you have that, obviously, the more your brand is going to stick in people's minds, and the more they feel like they know, maybe even like and trust you and want to work with you.
So when you're producing like a 15-second ad, is it easier for you to get like a 3-minute content from somebody and just turn that into an ad, or for you to give them a script and to film something just for that ad?
I would say it's easier to take it from existing content, even though you are, like I say, all the things I said before, having to trim it down, having to sacrifice parts that you think are really interesting, that are supposed to be there. It's a different sort of challenge in getting a person who wants to speak professionally to give you back 60 seconds or less. I think it's a different sort of challenge, and it's really hard, and I don't say that to poke fun, because it's a legitimate challenge to think in those small bites. Some people, I think through practice and repetition, training, are good at it. But I do think it's an experience thing. It's really something that has to be practiced over and over again, get that muscle memory and almost that inner clock that starts to tell you, okay, I need to wrap this point right here.
Yeah. I mean, that would be so difficult to think in, like, how can I get my point across in 15 seconds? Like that I can't imagine like saying, hey, you write a 15-second script and get everything you want out in that amount of time. That's got to be so difficult versus, just pulling from something they've already said.
Yeah, I think that's where it takes really a editor or a content producer who has an eye for those things to really look at it and pick the gold out of, content that's already been created. I think that's, and that's what I like. That's what I'm happy about. That's what I'm proud of, is kind of shaping and pulling out messages that my client will be like, oh man, this is, that was perfect. That little spot was perfect, and then there's, on top of just the content, getting the right content, and there's dressing it up with all kinds of, video and B-roll and whatever, sound effects, could be all sorts of things.
Is it something that you have to spend a lot of time learning about the client, what they're doing, what they're telling, what their main point is in order to do that? Or are you pretty good at, you're just able to find what the most important content is if you're watching that video?
I think there's definitely a absorption period that kind of needs to happen. I mean, some subjects are maybe easier than others, that you can watch a video and be like, okay, I get what this guy's talking about. I will say that my work that I'm doing is not limited to like one industry, so there are different things going on. So a lot of times, early meetings with people, I might be sitting and looking and I'm really chewing on what they're saying, but there's like a language barrier, because they have all the terminology and the understanding within there, and they'll say things, and for them it's clear as day, but for me, I'm like, right, it takes the time, and that's normal. But it's like you want to get to that point where it's like, okay, I'm understanding this world a little bit more, and and because my job is to help that make sense for future customers, which is how I refer to people that we're touching through social media. And that's something that comes up too with businesses, is like, well, I feel like I should have social media content, but, how do I know that does it work, is something people ask me as far as marketing. And I say, well, the way I frame it is that social media content is for future customers, because you're doing all those things like impressions, just like you drive by a bus stop and see an ad on there. You see a billboard, you see a commercial. Those are people making touches for future customers. So you're doing the same thing in social. And so you have to be kind of conscious of that. And again, that needs to lead, those appetizers need to lead to a meal. So if you have that meal to give them, and that meal should be a good enough meal that makes them want to slap their mama, like, a good meal that makes them want to buy. Like, there should be a call to action on that meal. If they go to your YouTube channel, watch a video, there should be a CTA there that makes them your customer. So, you left your breadcrumbs, they ate your apps, they ate your meal. Now they're your customer. Ideally that's the way it should go. It's not always so simple as that, but it should be though.
I'm curious which platform, as you work between them, which do you see, I guess, like a higher yield on those call to actions? Is it YouTube, or is it Instagram, or is it TikTok? Which do you usually see like a higher percentage of people going from, say, YouTube to an opt-in page, or Instagram to an opt-in page, or are those different?
Yeah, I think YouTube is a good one because YouTube, people are more comfortable. Like, as we were talking about with the social stuff, the idea is that you're passing by, you're scrolling, and you're just kind of trying to get somebody to stop for a second. And it helped you in the way that the algorithm, if they stop, they'll show them more of your content. If they see that they're kind of biting, then they're going to get more of it. But when it comes to YouTube, it's like people are hanging out, they're watching the video, the title was interesting enough to them that they thought, oh, maybe I can get something from this video. Maybe it'll be interesting to me. So they're kind of seated. I think those people are people who kind of more sitting on the edge of their chair. So that's where I like to have a good, strong, I think that, social, it can still lead to all, you can put links, you can do similar things, but I think it's a bigger jump, from a little appetizer to, maybe a customer than a YouTube would be, so I
That
think
makes
that's a
sense.
good front door.
I'm guessing especially too, because on YouTube, you can give them like, say, a short as an appetizer, which leads them back to like a longer form video, which is just priming and priming and priming. And at the end of that long form video, if they're sitting through the whole thing, then it's a good chance that they probably like you and like what you're saying, and they're more likely to opt in.
Yeah, absolutely. And a lot of YouTube, I listen to, so, I would even, I don't know if this is good to say, but when I used to commute like an hour for work, number of years back, I would watch YouTube videos, but I wasn't really watching them. I was just listening to talking head, but
Yeah.
because they were providing information that I found either entertaining or useful or, so I was listening. I cared about what they had to say. And so those people, whatever channels those might have been that I was listening to, those people I would definitely go to and see what they're offering. And I would at least consider it, because they're already adding so much to me personally, even if it's just entertainment, if they're doing something else that's more entertaining or going to be in my city or anything like that, then I'm well primed, to pay attention and to consider it.
Well, tell us about your biggest hurdle, either dealing with now or in the past. I know social media is ever changing. Being a content creator, you might not always hit it on the spot the first time. Maybe you don't click with somebody and you just have to cut them off or they cut you off. Like, what's a big hurdle for you right now?
Well, one that I think of historically is actually a kind of operations minded sort of thing, in that when you're creating all this content, when there's a big library of content, all you think about is the end result, especially if you're the business that's maybe hiring a content producer to help you or some kind of media production company, right? You think of the results you want. However, there is a lot of managing a big library of content and how you do that. And depending on the size of these video files, where they're getting stored and how this is happening. And so there's a lot of organization that's involved, which is where thankfully I feel like having both sides of my brain active in that way, I've been able to do. But the other thing with that is, though, for the company who's thinking all about the result, they might not feel good about investing money in your time to do that. There might be kind of a conflict in like, hey, like, why is so much time going into, this and that? It's like, well, that's a part of this. This is a big elephant that we're eating, an ongoing elephant eating type process. And so if people aren't packing and storing this meat, we're going to have a problem, So so that's one sort of challenge that I come up with before, is sort of the dynamic, with me and the company I'm contracting with of navigating and kind of getting them familiar with, hey, this whole process and what it looks like. And there's, kind of a lot of work that leads up to the wedding day, if that makes sense. A lot of stuff before you see it hit the small screen.
Yep.
Yeah,
Sure. Yep. My next question was, how many hard drives do you have stacked around your office and home?
Oh, good Lord. It's a lot. There was a client. So when I was working, actually early days working with Pedro, I was actually in person with him in his office when he had an office in California. And so we would actually film there in his office, and he would be creating stuff online, trainings online. There was a combination of actual video footage, multiple cameras, and online Zoom, cloud stuff, StreamYard stuff coming from different places, iPhone stuff. And so that company was blowing up and taking off. I was purchasing probably a 4 terabyte hard drive every month. So it can be a lot, especially in the world of online digital marketing. There's a speed component that's important. But I tend to lean towards quality. Now you got to have a balance of both. It's not like you can just say, oh, I'm not going to do it fast. I'm going to do it quality, But so with that kind of comes probably larger files, bigger 4K footage and, things like that. So it's all kind of, it comes with the territory. And yeah, I got a lot of hard drives stuffed into my closet in my office here, and, a few on my desk. And it doesn't go away.
So Mason, tell me just kind of a combo question here. Like, what's your goal, your end goal with like, what do you really want to do with your business? Like, is there like a big dream of maybe producing some longer films, or do you really love being in this specific position? And if there's anybody listening, like, who's your ideal client right now? Somebody wants to reach out.
Yeah, I think I've always had like a personal passion to speak and to communicate. That's always been really important to me. So I think that's why I like getting in the weeds and helping in the process, figuring out the technology, figuring out how to get the message out. And so I'm kind of using my clients to learn and perfect my process, and I've done some YouTube channels and things, but I want to produce a really high quality podcast of my own. And that's the plan in the next year, to get that kind of formed and put together. But I'm also kind of looking at the long game and saying, hey, the more that I learn from my clients, actually, the more material I have, the more experience and wisdom and knowledge I have to share. And what I'm finding right now in my kind of new business is that working with people who really are passionate about building their kind of first platform. I like people who are open to working with somebody on their message and shaping that and figuring out what it is. It's kind of fun launching something new. So, I mean, there's something cool too about jumping in and helping, a big team that has big potential to go far. But I kind of have a personal little place in my heart for that passionate individual or small group that's trying to launch a new platform for themselves. So that's where my work is kind of focused right now.
Nice. I like that. I like hearing that. It's fun. We interview a lot of people on here who have hired the Collab team for work, but I feel like this is the first time we've interviewed somebody that the Collab team has hired for work.
Wow.
It's been great talking to you. I'm looking forward to getting into work with you more especially as you help us out, as you possibly help out some people we work with in the future. I mean, we've all seen your work. We've all seen your work ethic. We've worked closely together with other clients already. So definitely looking forward to seeing and hearing from you more in the future, Mason.
Absolutely. Yeah. I appreciate you guys having me on. It's been a lot of fun and always fun to work with you guys.
Thank you for tuning in to the Ops Experts Club podcast. New episodes available every week on Spotify, iTunes, and everywhere you listen to podcasts. If you're curious about how some of the biggest names in entrepreneurship have scaled their businesses to the next level, check out some of our best content on this topic by going to foundationsthatscale.com. You can find the link in our bio and do your part to improve as an ops expert.